Think we got Lee calling in from Illinois. Lee, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hello, Dan. Hi, Tim. Yeah, I'm vacationing here in Illinois, originally, well, from Canada also.
Nice,
But
nice.
I've had a chance to do some traveling by train over the last couple of weeks. And had a chance to start chatting with a guy who was also on a train. He turned out being a Presbyterian pastor, and we
Mm,
talked about all kinds of things for hours and hours. Um, and one thing we talked about a little bit was common values.
hmm
And I know that as a Catholic, my human rights were always a very important thing to me.
hmm
And even now, I'd say I hold on to humanist values even more strongly than I do my atheist perspective. And I think it's important to to work together with these common values. So my question is, why shouldn't we allow our national borders to be more fluid in order to enable all humans to move wherever they need to go to make better lives for themselves?
I'm 100% with you. I talked about this. I don't know if I talked about this on Truth Wanted. I think I talked about this on Talk Heathen. I think last time this topic was brought up, but I am absolutely, I mean, personally, and the atheist community of Austin doesn't, let me volunteer to talk about every single political policy I'm interested in, but I am super pro borders myself. I definitely think there's more conversation need to be had in that area. I think what I don't want to say radicalized me, but what really turned me on to it was a book called Open Borders, The Science and Ethics of Immigration by Brian Kaplan. And I think the argument can be made, even if you are the most hardcore pro-capitalist, like, okay, what's in it for me, that open borders are good for pretty much everyone, right? Why is it that I get to grow up in this country that's supposed to be awesome for my economic opportunity and other people don't because they live 50 miles, 100 miles, 200 miles just on an arbitrary line away from me, right? It's not like the people that first got here, like, we're like, oh, yeah, we get this stuff for sure, but the rest of you guys, forget it, right? Like, what? So some guys a couple hundred years ago made up some lines, and now other people don't have access to economic opportunities. Why? Why not? Why not come here? And just like, life in general, obviously, I hold the idea of being an American more in the spirit rather than the legal documentation of it, right? At least that old idea of, hey, there is something that can be made here, a better life that can be made if you try hard, right? I wish that was still true, but unfortunately, we do have limitations on what kinds of people we let into this country and how we benefit from them, right? Specifically, we do let some people in, but only if we can, make sure that they're not sending too much money away, right? And they still have to, be integrated in our system in some way. And yeah, it is sort of a ethnocentric kind of understanding of the world and also just of economic, policy in general. Because the truth is, we also prosper because we take advantage of other country systems that aren't as developed or don't have the same kinds of opportunities and resources that we do. So yeah, I'm with you there. I don't know, Tim, you probably feel the same way, or maybe not. Maybe you're like radically like, no, we need to take these immigrants away. I don't know. Maybe that's your take.
No,
Probably not.
probably not. That's definitely not my take.
Yeah.
I try and be honest about what I know and don't know. I just don't know enough about this topic to have like a real strong, here's the solution. That book sounds very provocative. I'm certainly open to hearing it. I definitely, let's be very clear. The current white evangelical push about closing borders is so baked in propaganda. The idea that Mexico, quote unquote, isn't sending their best is just not true. I mean, the Cato Institute has done the research on this. Undocumented immigrants are half as likely to commit crimes as actual native born, citizens, et cetera. I mean, this whole narrative that we see from Tucker Carlson, it's bullshit. Let me just start there before I say anything else.
Yeah.
And even things like fentanyl, it comes from people trying to cross the border legally, almost all of it, because it makes sense. If you're going to smuggle drugs, you want to use citizens, right, to do that. So anyway, I say all that because so much of this is just baked in with propaganda. But I don't really know the solution. It's complicated. Systems are complicated. Humans are complicated. There's a lot going on. Of course, I think we need some kind of border reform. We need to be able to fund this stuff to make the system more fair and just and seamless. I think that we should legalize all undocumented immigrants in America so they can start paying into the tax system and actually have worker protection. So I'm in favor of all of that for sure. It's a shame, though, that this conversation for so long has been hijacked between great replacement conspiracy theorists who are using using it to promote KKK level talking points about how, the deep state is flooding our system to replace us, which, by the way, Turning Point USA and other groups actually promote from their platforms. And I know that because I've been to these events. So that's not the take, but I don't really have a solution or like, oh, well, the new policy should be open borders or reforming the borders. I just don't know. I need to do more of a deep dive, frankly.
There you go. Lee, satisfied with that answer?
Yeah, I've always been confused, even when back over 10 years ago when I was Catholic, and just the importance that now a lot of Christians, but probably a lot of atheists too, put on keeping a border secure, keeping people out. But for Christians, it just never made sense to me when I was a Christian.
Yeah.
Where borders, just national borders, are so made up.
I agree.
I would think, what would Jesus do? And it wouldn't be keep starving people out of our country. It would be feed them.
I agree with you. If I was a Christian again, I would be the first to cite the fact that, look, Jesus was an immigrant, right? According to the gospel accounts, particularly in Matthew, right? That Jesus himself was received in a homeland that was foreign to him. So does it not make sense that in the Christian ethos that we should also similarly open ourselves to others and not let the political strifes of entities and people that we're never going to meet and who don't necessarily care about our well-being interfere with our interaction in daily lives? And I'll tell you, I live in Texas, so I've grown up with that kind of, let's be honest, racism most of the time, right? This idea of too many migrants coming in, that's kind of hidden behind, just a concern, right? And I love the people here that are undocumented that I've gotten to know, because they're the ones that are really risking themselves just so they can live their best lives here. And like, what's more American than that, honestly? Like, why not let people who want to, get the best opportunities for themselves do that? Like, why should I be the one to say, like, hey, actually, you can't be here because some laws say that you can't, and that's it, I guess. Go home to wherever, if you even have a home. Yeah, it doesn't seem humane to me. I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, it's really tricky because obviously, and let me just clarify, I'm kind of out of my depth a little bit here, meaning I don't feel as confident in saying that the next few statements are based in hard facts. But my understanding is that the idea of current nation states is kind of a new concept in the scheme of world history. Like even World War I really reshaped a lot of how we understand nationalism and like what it means to be a nation and a people. And so a lot of what we're talking about is just so foreign to the world that is coming from the world of Jesus and like, the ancient Middle East, etc. And so I do think about that too. Like on one hand, I think about if, being a Christ follower is a radical calling, as I believe in many ways it is, we are called to welcome the immigrant and to welcome the foreigner. I mean, there's pretty strong commands there, despite whatever a nation would be or wouldn't be doing. At the same time, I also recognize that we live in a very different world than the world of Jesus. And so what do we do with that, right? Because we do live just in a different cultural context. I mean, I would never agree with Paul when he says slaves obey your masters. I'd be like, no, thanks, Paul. Like, you shouldn't do that. I would never be like, look, guys, the Bible is clear. Slaves shouldn't obey their masters. I would say, no, I disagree with Paul on that. So I'm kind of always in tension with like how I negotiate parts of the text and how I kind of bring some to like, yes, I think I should be doing that, versus others where I'm like, I don't think that's really applicable anymore for our current cultural moment. And when it comes to immigration, I'm just still trying to figure out what's the best path forward that respects the immigrant and welcomes them, while also making plenty of room for people who are also here, at the same time. Obviously, no one wants anyone coming into their home or whatever country to do harm. We all agree there, right? So like, how do we do these things as ethically as possible for the sake of the migrant and also for the citizen? I just think it's complicated, frankly.
Yeah, I have a lot to. I don't know. We could go on all night about it, but I really think, again, that book I mentioned by Brian Kaplan, I think really kind of started that conversation for me.
Yeah, let's check it out.
In terms of like, I mean, he makes a very strong economic case, but also an ethical, moral case as to why the modern system of national borders is detrimental to human flourishing, and why that it's something that we should ultimately, if not completely abolish, severely reform. And that really kind of changed my opinion on it and got me more interested. But for now, Lee, we are getting towards the tail end of the show. I am going to let you go. I'll let you give one last piece. Any final thoughts you want to give us before we let you go?
No, that's it for now. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Tim.
Great. Thank you, Lee.